Welcome to the second video in the Sitting on the Floor series. In this video, we'll build upon what we began to explore in the previous video, so please make sure that you've participated in the first video in this series. To begin with, we're going to come to a seated position. As in the first video, the same will hold true throughout the series. We may sit on the floor or we may sit on a bed if necessary. But in order to do this exploration, you will need to be able to sit upright without leaning for support. So if you're unable to do that, then this will not be the series for you at this time. It will be perhaps at another time. And if you're struggling to sit upright without leaning, let me know. And we can explore that, and perhaps I can create some video explorations that will assist you in getting clarity on how to do that, because it is possible. That's an important point for all of us, is that it is possible. Our bodies are capable of sitting upright without leaning back or leaning against. We can be gently buoyant, aligned vertically, so that we are connected with the support underneath us, and we are allowing that support to produce that buoyancy within us. So at first, you will certainly find that you are straining to be upright. The goal of this exploration is to discover how you're straining and to discover how to cease to strain, because when you cease to strain, you naturally and effortlessly make contact with the support, and you begin to surrender to that support. So just to clarify what the process is, it's actually very simple. So we do many explorations, many movements, there are a lot of words, but the core of the exploration is very, very simple. The core of the exploration is to become aware, to become consciously aware of the habits of strain. That's actually it. But I can elaborate a little bit more, because as we become consciously aware of the habits of strain, what we are necessarily beginning to recognize is our unconscious participation in those habits of strain. Previously, we made the mistake of believing that those habits of strain were something being done to us. So we have stories about it, that the habit of strain is caused by something from the past, for example, an accident, an injury, a poor lifestyle choices, poor lifestyle habits. Perhaps we blame it on the circumstances of our life, our parents, our parents' parents, the town where we lived when we were children, the school we attended, whatever. We have stories that excuse the ongoing indulgence of these habits of strain because we project them out there so that we wrongly imagine that we are victims of those habits. Through these explorations, we become aware, and this is very important, which is why I'm taking the time to say this. So please hear what I'm saying, see what I'm pointing to, because this is very important in terms of being able to have rapid success with this method that I'm suggesting. Truly, the results can be very rapid. So understand that. You do not need to struggle. You don't need to try really hard. You don't need to practice for hours on end, for years. The results can be very rapid because the results come from the clear seeing, the clear recognition of the actual nature of the experience. That I know that runs contrary to the common belief, but I'm telling you truthfully that all of those habits can be undone quite rapidly when we understand the method. Understanding the method is the challenge. I myself have much to learn about the method. But the more that we can trust in the method, the more that the results speak for themselves, and then the more we trust in the method because the results are there. So the trust grows because we see the results. The more that we have the results, the more we trust, so then the greater the results. Some of you already recognize that. You already can see that pattern playing out. So continue to trust in it. Continue to trust in the method. It's a method of awareness. It's a method of clear seeing, clear recognition of the actual nature of the experience. Because when you clearly see that nobody and nothing is doing this to you other than you are the only one. This is only these habits of gripping, tension, armoring, strain, effort, pain, discomfort, and all the rest of it is only you doing it, which is wonderful news because it means that you instantly in this moment of clear seeing are liberated from the wrong belief. So we're sitting. You may sit in any position on the floor that is stable for you. I suggest, or the bed, or on the floor with some padding. I suggest that if you can do it, sit cross-legged. I believe it will give you the greatest stability. And as I said yesterday, there are many variations on cross-legged, and perhaps if there's enough interest or it seems valuable, I can create videos exploring those possibilities, but just find one that works for you. So let's review what we did yesterday as a starting point. Notice if the conditioned mind says, oh, I already know how to do this. No, you don't. Nobody knows how to do this. I don't know how to do this. We have to come to this freshly. We don't know how to do it. Let's now explore. So let's place our hands on the top of the pelvis, on the waist, so that the thumbs wrap around to the back and the fingers come to the front, and the hand rests on the iliac crest like a shelf. Notice if this is clearer than it was yesterday. And notice if you can already begin to simply consciously direct the intention to soften or to release, so that you become more and more familiar with what previously were unconscious habits of strain. So you, like all of us, have unconscious habits of strain stored in the waist. And you, like all of us, can become more familiar with those habits, and you can cultivate this skill of consciously softening or releasing those habits of unnecessary effort, so that the bones become clearer. The soft tissue softens, the bones become clearer. Now let's bend to the left, keeping the pelvis stable. Bend only as far as you can bend without holding your breath, without gripping in the face, without pressing with the tongue, without clenching the throat. And then pause and soften. Allow for the right side of the body to lengthen and soften. Allow the natural breath, uncontrolled, to gently enhance the softening. As you effortlessly, naturally inhale, you can feel that the torso must expand. So allow the torso to expand by softening, by releasing. Slowly, without introducing any tension. At least without any unnecessary tension. Discover how little effort is required to slowly come out of the bend and to upright. Now let's do the same to the right. So we are bending to the right, only as far as we can bend without clenching or gripping, without holding the breath, and without moving the pelvis. So the pelvis remains stable. The left side of the torso must soften and lengthen. The waist must lengthen. The distance between the lower ribs and the iliac crest must lengthen. The space between the ribs also will lengthen. But this here, this space between the lower rib and the iliac crest, is where you will likely discover the greatest lengthening. So allow for that to soften. Keep the pelvis stable. Let the weight of the pelvis be fully released into the floor. We're only bending as far as it's possible for you. You are only bending as far as it's possible for you to bend without strain. Don't think that more is better. More is only better if more is possible without any strain. And then more is only better because more is revealing more of the habits of restriction so that you can become aware of them and release them. So allow the natural breath to enhance the lengthening and softening. Notice where you're gripping. Observe the stories associated with the gripping. I must, I have to. If I don't, something bad will happen. I'll fall, I'll get injured. See that it's possible to very, very gently, very slowly soften. Let the pelvis be heavy. Let the pelvis rest. Without introducing any unnecessary effort, slowly come out of the bend so that you are coming to upright. Notice how supple the waist is. Notice how supple, and let it remain supple. Let's do side to side at your own pace, several bends. So same process, slowly bending. Let the waist soften. Let it be yielding. You might be amazed at how much suppleness is there, how much ease, how much freedom, how much power. So at your own pace, make sure that you're able to breathe. Don't hold the breath at any point. Don't squeeze the face. Don't push the tongue. If you observe yourself beginning to do any of those things, then you've pushed too far. So ease up. It's much better to do a smaller movement with awareness and consciously releasing or inhibiting the habits of unnecessary effort. So you might think that the waist is isolated and has nothing to do whatsoever with the eyes or the tongue, but you would be mistaken. So test it out. Can you test it out? Find out what I'm saying is true. When you allow for the eyes, the face, the nose, the tongue, the lips, the ears, the neck, the chest, the shoulders, when you allow all of the body to remain soft, supple, with awareness, then the waist becomes way more supple. There's no limit. The only limit, which isn't a real limit, but it's a limit, a false limit imposed by our willingness to observe and inhibit the habits of unnecessary effort. So one more to each side at your own pace. And really observe in all of the movements that we do together. When you next come upright, just pause here. Observe what it is that you habitually overlook. So I notice, for example, a somewhat subtle popping in the backside of my right thigh when I'm coming up from the bend to the right. Now that's just an example of what I notice, not something that you must notice, but it's an example of what can be noticed. That subtle popping is something that I am doing unconsciously. It's unnecessary strain, tension that I am holding chronically, and then I am adapting all of my movements to that. The question, though, that's useful to ask is that the most pleasurable, the most efficient, the best way, or might it be best, more pleasurable, more efficient, to become aware of how I do that and to release that? I know the answer. So when you become aware of something like that, slow down. Don't go past that point. Or at least don't go far past that point. In the movement, or in movements, you will discover all of these little things, these little pulling, popping, sliding, sensations, and they all are indicating something that you are doing unconsciously. Slow down and don't go far past that point. Explore in that range, very slowly and gently, until it becomes clear to you. When it becomes clear to you, you will discover how you do not need to do that. Then the movement becomes even better. So now let's explore how we can place our hands differently and discover new things about what seems to be the same movement. So we can take our hands, which were on the waist, and we can slide them down out of frame to the so that they come to rest on the tops of the thighs, where the thighs and the pelvis meet, so in the inguinal creases if possible. But don't get hung up on finding exactly the right spot. The most important thing, especially right now, is just developing the sensitivity, because when you develop the sensitivity, then everything comes alive, and then all movement offers you the same possibility. Then as you're walking, as you're doing dishes, as you're driving your car, whatever you're doing, that becomes the opportunity. The formal explorations still are wonderful and lovely and rich and exciting and all of that, but the method comes alive in you so that it's always happening whenever you choose, and there are no specific conditions for that. So the sensitivity is the most important thing. So what do I mean by sensitivity? Inward sensitivity and outward sensitivity. These are my terms that I'm using. When I say inward sensitivity, I mean the inner somatic perception, the inner perception of the sensation. What you can begin to perceive with increasing clarity when you are simply sitting or simply lying down, so that you can clearly begin to sense the sensations and how they are indicating unnecessary effort, and how you can begin to soften that. As you cultivate that sensitivity, you begin to learn how to come more and more into alignment, into buoyancy, to receive that support, so that the movements become less and less necessary. So cultivating that inner perception is very, very important in this method. The outer perception, again, that's my term. When I'm using that term, I'm referring to usually the hands, but it doesn't have to be the hands, because we could use any part of the body against another part of the body. But in this case, we're using the hands, placing the hands on the thighs, near or on the inguinal creases, if possible, and if not, don't worry about it. Like I said, that's the placement is secondary. The most important thing is cultivating this perception. And you can feel with your fingers, with your hands, the state of the tissue. So there's soft tissue there, and there's bone there, and you can, with your hands, feel whatever you feel, and notice that it's not clear right now. You don't know what you're touching. You don't know what the state of what you're touching is. You don't know why it's like that. You don't know what it should be or could be. So having awareness of what it is that you're feeling with the hands is very, very helpful in clarifying rapidly. So let's keep the hands placed here, and let's do the same movement. So keeping the pelvis stable, bending to the side. Pause. Soften. Notice that with the hand placed there, it helps with the inner perception as well. So you have outer perception and inner perception, and both are working together. And you can begin to become aware of how you can consciously soften. Whatever softening you become aware of, you can feel with the hand. You can feel the tissue, the soft tissue, softening. And inwardly, you can become aware of the process by which you are softening. Now, that might seem like nonsense right now, but I promise you, it's a very specific experience that's available to you. You just aren't skilled at it yet, but you can become skilled at it. And it's a skill that's very worth developing, as far as I'm concerned, because it will improve the quality of your life. I very much believe that. It's my experience. Now, be aware of the softening. You should notice some change in the state of the tissue. You can feel it under your fingers. It feels different. Don't concern yourself about trying to figure out what muscle that is, or what fascia that is, or what bone that is, or what ligament that is, or how that part of the body is supposed to be working, or any of that. Don't just be concerned only about your awareness of the softness, the felt perception, the external perception, and the internal perception, and maintain that softness, maintain that softness in the soft tissue as you slowly come to upright. See that you can do that. So previously, your nervous system believed that you needed to maintain that tension. You have now proved to yourself, beyond doubt, that you don't need that tension. Certainly not to bend or to come back to upright. Maybe you need that tension for something else, but definitely not for this movement that we're doing. So now remain aware of that softness and continue to allow it to be soft. Don't reintroduce that tension. If you notice that tension reasserting itself unconsciously, but you'll feel it with your hand, pause. Soften again. And then resume. This is very important, because if you want rapid results, don't do this mechanically. You have to do it with awareness. You could mechanically bend for hours, and you would not necessarily get any benefit. In fact, you might injure yourself, because you'd just be reinforcing the same unconscious habits. With a single bend, done with awareness, you can permanently undo unnecessary habits of strain. That is true. So the quality of your presence, conscious awareness of the experience, and your conscious inhibition of the old habits is key. That's how you get rapid results. Okay, now to the right, or the other side. So we're keeping the pelvis stable, same as before. Bending slowly to the side with the hands on the inguinal creases, on the tops of the thighs. And let the tissue soften. Release whatever is unnecessary. Let the pelvis be heavy. Let the thighs be heavy. The thighs don't need to lift up. There's no benefit in lifting the thighs here. The stability is in the legs and pelvis resting. They anchor you. So notice what you feel. Notice that you feel both externally with the hand and inwardly a softening. Notice how you do that. Be consciously aware. Don't think about it. It's a felt thing. You can feel it. You can feel the release, and you can become familiar with how that release occurs. Maintain that release. Maintain that softness as you slowly come to upright. Now, this may seem very challenging at first. Don't be discouraged. I promise you, it's possible for you. It is absolutely possible for you. It will happen sooner than you might think, so long as you follow the instructions. Be gentle, be patient, and trust and know that this is absolutely possible, and that the results will be rapid and miraculous. So let's bend to the left again. See how it is that you are now aware of what you were previously not aware of, so that you can bend while maintaining the same softness. Not only that, but you can soften even more. Allow the thigh to become totally relaxed. Allow the buttocks to become totally relaxed. Notice that you can do that just with awareness. Just with awareness and intention. Now, maintain that same softness, which you can feel with your hand and you can feel inwardly. Don't reassert the gripping. It's unnecessary. You now know that. So, knowing that it is unnecessary, slowly come to upright, maintaining that same softness. And to the right. Remember, don't go further than you can go. So you should be able to breathe. No gripping, no holding the breath, no squeezing of the face. Let the thighs be relaxed and heavy. Let the buttocks be relaxed. Let the legs and pelvis just anchor you here. Notice how you can soften even more, and how you feel that softening inwardly and outwardly. And then maintaining that same softness consciously throughout the movement. Come all the way up. And then bring your hands to your lap. Slowly, smoothly, so that you don't disturb anything. And just observe your sitting. Notice how much more anchored you are. Notice how you are aware inwardly of the softening, the inhibition of the old habits of unnecessary effort. You now know in your body, in your experience, that that effort is not necessary for this movement. So you can simply allow for the tissue to remain soft, and you can enjoy the experience of feeling a greater stability all the way from the head to the buttocks, all the way down through the torso. That's it for this exploration, and I'll see you next time.